Hallelujah. Blessed be the name of the Lord, who is worthy to be praised and adored. So we lift up holy hands in one accord, singing, blessed be thy name, blessed be thy name, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name, blessed be the name of the Lord, of the Lord, who is worthy to be praised and adored, and adored. So we lift up holy hands in one accord, singing, blessed be thy name. So, discipleship, we are continuing with the series Discipleship. And why is discipleship actually essential and actually important? And last week we actually saw when Jesus was saying that anyone who will follow him will have to take up his cross and learn of him to deny himself and know that there are certain things that even entails following Jesus. Following Jesus is not just something that you are meant to do as a copy and a pasting. It is something that you are meant to actively engage and involve yourself in. So it's an heart of you knowing that it actually requires some things from you and you will be demanded of some things while you follow, while you are being discipled by Christ. And this evening we'll also be looking at the part two of discipleship. And whereby we know that discipleship is actually for a major and a main reason of something that is being formed, something that is being achieved in the life of the person who is being discipled, and the person who disciples someone can necessarily know that, oh, for the time I have actually put into this, I am able to see this manifest, I'm able to see this come to play in the life of this particular person. So, which means that discipleship, both the person who is being discipled and the person that disciples someone is actually looking forward to something to achieve at the end of the day. So, which means that no discipleship will be complete where nothing is set to be achieved, where nothing is set to be looked, or where nothing is actually, nobody is looking forward to anything to make it an end goal of that particular period, of that particular training, or the process of going through that particular season where somebody come under a teaching or a training of another person who disciples one. So tonight we'll be looking at the biblical examples of the people who were discipled and also a biblical example of someone who was not discipled. I will be looking at it just for us to make comparison of certain things that would let us know what the person that was being discipled and the person who was not discipled, what's actually the major importance of discipleship in the life of the one who was discipled and what was missing in the life of the person who was also not discipled. So this evening we'll be looking at, just as we know that discipleship is a formation of character, is a formation of life, is a formation of certain things that you want to see manifest, you want the person to actually be keen to have, and you want to make the person maybe do away with some certain set of characters or certain set of things that they are used to or they are found or fond of doing over time. So this evening we'll be looking majorly at the life of Moses and the life of Aaron. The two were both leaders that were leading or that led the children of Israel, and we can be able to see that they both hold a particular and a major role even in leadership in leading the children of Israel. And we are going to be examining their lives in order to see how they were able to lead and what actually comes, how discipleship comes to make. Okay, so sorry. Okay, so sorry about that. So you're able to see that. right from the book of Exodus chapter 2 and starting from verse 11, we can be able to see how Moses was trying to actually make himself a leader. And when he saw an Egyptian and an Israelite fighting, he had to become somebody who began to see that, oh, maybe this is what I should start doing for my people, for the children of Israel. And in that moment, what he thought he could do was to kill the Egyptians that was actually fighting the Israelites. And we can see that even the second day after this, when he saw an Israelite, two Israelites, that they were fighting each other, and he was like, why are you fighting each other? And there was a statement that was made that, oh, do you want to kill me like the way you also killed the Egyptian? And he said to himself, oh, this thing is actually not eating. I have to run for my dear life. I have to actually make sure that Pharaoh does not hear. And if he hears about this thing, I'm still in the palace, I might lose his head for it. And he ran. Why? Because he knows that at this point in time, running away is actually what can be able to save him. Running away is actually what can be able to make secure his life and preserve his life and destiny at that point in time. And why he do that? God has a greater purpose for him. Why he actually do that? Because if he had not done that, he would have been in the palace of Pharaoh. He would have been raised with Pharaoh, and there are some certain things that being in the Pharaoh's palace could not have been taught, because there are some things that God actually wants to, there are some trainings that God would actually want him go through. And we could see that being in Pharaoh's palace at that point in time made him to do some certain things that were not the right way of doing them. And for God to actually make corrections on those certain behaviors, he had to make him go into like an exit for 40 years. And those exits was actually training him. It looked as if he was a man who was forgotten. It looked as if it was a man that nobody even cares to know his whereabouts. But God was actually seeing to it that this man was gradually undergoing some trainings that would make him not to be so much dependent on his own self. The trainings that will not make him to make himself want to lead in his own abilities and styles, but will rather depend on how God will have his people to be led. And these 40 years was when God had to see to it that yes, he was there. He had to run even to where he began to become a shepherd, somebody who has been raised with silver spoon, somebody who has been used to the life of being served all his lives. Now becomes somebody who was serving, who becomes somebody who was rearing, raising sheep for another man that was not even his own. But God was gradually teaching him. God was actually taking him, because this was what was needed. It would be a great error for somebody who was a leader or who was going to be a leader over thousands of people not to have been trained well, or not to have gone through a process that could make him to be fit even for that role that God will have him be into. And at that point in time, God had to make sure that what this man needs is inside him. He already has the exposure to certain things, to how the luxury life should be, but he also needed an exposure to a life that can help him balance, a life that can help him see the greater needs that even being in the palace might not be able to help him see, a life that's even have to be served every year and there. Oh, he's the prince, he's Pharaoh's prince, we have to respect him, we have to give him that homage. He have to be brought under that training whereby nobody even regards him as anything. Nobody even sees him as somebody who needs to be respected, or somebody who needs to, they have to pay their homage to. And at this point in time, God was gradually teaching him. God was actually gradually taking him through the process of, oh, Moses, I am teaching you to be independent. I'm teaching you not to be ambitious. I'm teaching you how to submit yourself. I'm teaching you how to learn more, even to be humble. And no wonder the Bible says he was the meekest man that was on earth. So if he had been a man who had been exposed to power, to authority, he might not have learnt those things. Meekness, humility, and every other thing that I was able to learn might not be learnt in the palace. But God has to orchestrate a way that no, this is not the platform that I would use to train you. I have used the platform to raise you, but this is not the platform that can teach you, imbibe into you what's needed to be imbibed or needed for you to learn, even at this point in time. And for a person and a destiny that I'm actually going to or allow you or make you fulfill, even as such a time later in the coming days. So this made us to know that yes, as much as God was also mindful of the children of Israel that they were in suffering, God did not just choose any man. He went for a man who had been trained. He went for a man who understands coming into leadership, how we can carry the people, how we can be able to bear them. Because having to the thing that the most difficult thing is to control humans. The most difficult thing is to have yourself controlling people that sometimes you just have a lot of different mindset of people. Oh, I don't, what does it, who do it, does he even think he is? How will you tell me to do something? So many people would actually have different things to say to object your own opinion. But there is a man that is needed that can be able to absorb. There is a man that can, it's like a buffer that he can take, attract every other things that comes to him. It's not just a man that is raised in an authoritative way. If I say this, if you are not following it, then I'm going to show I'm made of. I'm going to let you know that I have the power to undo or to do things. I am going to let you know that this is the stuff I'm made of. God had to be deliberate about choosing who was going to be the leader for the children of Israel, and that was the man Moses. Why was Moses chosen? Why was he the one that was assigned for this assignment? Because those years of training, even when you look as if nobody was saying, even when you look as if oh, nobody even cares to know his whereabouts or if he's living or not living, it was something that God was saying to him that there was a character formation in him. There was something that was producing. There was something that Moses, the man who was that entered into that land, was no longer the man that God is beginning to break, God is beginning to mold, God is beginning to teach him by the experiences of what is going through. Because there are some certain things that if you don't go through it by experience, you cannot learn it. There are certain things that you can only hear people say to you. There are some certain things that you can begin to gather a lot of, oh, this person said this. But it differs when you experience some certain things because it is your experience that helps you to understand, that carries you even to be able to know more that what it takes, because there are some feelings that you might not be able to, you cannot be able to experience. Even if people tell you that, oh, this thing, and you try to sympathize or to empathize with them, you still cannot be able to understand that feeling unless you have been in such, unless you have undergone one, and you can be able to liken, oh, now I can relate with you. I know what you are speaking of, because that feeling can be, you can reckon with it. You can be able to understand what, from the perspective this person is actually speaking of. And the man Moses. The man Moses was not chosen accidentally. It was a man God was intentional about. It was a man that he wanted to, or maybe Moses had actually gotten a glimpse of, oh, I'm going to be a deliverer. And the way he wanted to deliver the children of Israel was to start killing the Egyptian. But God said, no, Moses, this is not the way I am going to make you do this assignment for me. There is a certain way I want you to do this assignment. You're not going to kill all the Egyptians one after the other by yourself, but depend on my own skills, depend on how I will want you to fulfill this assignment. Even as much as you are eager, as much as you want to stop this, as much as you want to put an end to all this suffering that the children of Israel might be going through in the hands of the Egyptian. But this is not the best way. This is not the way I want it to be done. I want you to actually know that I cannot use your way to achieve what I want to achieve. You would rather trust me. You would rather follow the way I want you to follow and go through what I want you to go through for this core purpose to actually be achieved. And that was it about Moses. That Moses had to go through that training. Those years that I spent with Jethro, his father-in-law, they were not for waste of time. Those years that it looked as if, oh, Moses was a man that was just raising the sheep, that was just going through about the father's business up and down. Was not the time that God has actually used to for and the priest he had to go to the land of the Midian. So it's not the time that God has is a waste even in the life of Moses. It was something that was working arms even in the purpose and in the plan of God. That until God has vetted Moses, until God has been able to verify and validate that yes, this man is able to handle the assignment. this man is a man that you can send for this task because he has been made in this process. He has actually gone through this teaching, and I've been able to see that what I wanted him to learn, he has been able to get it. I'm gonna have to call him Moses. Your time is up here because I have achieved what I wanted to achieve. 40 years was what it took God to be able to go through, for Moses to go through that training, and for him to come out in order to be the leader and the one that will actually lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. And when we are going to be looking at another man, which is actually Aaron. Aaron was a man that it was just Moses that said, "Oh God, I'm not eloquent enough. I cannot speak well." And God has to say, "Okay, if that's going to be your excuses, Aaron is your brother. Is going to be a mouthpiece for you. So don't worry about that." And we can see that the man Aaron had never been in such a situation whereby God will have him go through that process. God will have him go through a training period. God will have him go through a time whereby it's being made, his characters are being formed. There is a formation that is going in him. And we will not be able to see that why the two lead the children of Israel. Even as God will now say, okay, since you want this, you want somebody who will speak as a spokesman for you, let's use your brother Aaron. Let's go for him. But rather, Aaron was not somebody who was chosen by God. But it was because of Moses, oh God, I'm a stammerer. I'm a this. Okay. So it was just a way of God saying that I know that I didn't make a mistake coming to choose you for this assignment. But if you continue to give these excuses before me all the time, then let's go for Moses. Let's go for Aaron. Aaron will be used. I will not say that Aaron was not a man who was discipled. Aaron was not a man who went through any training. Aaron was not a man that actually went through to understand that, oh, this is the God that called, this is the God that has formed, this is the things that this God has been able to reveal to him. Because even in the speaking of God with Moses, it was always with Moses. Aaron was not a man who was and a person that he got a yes called directly himself. But it was just like a person that Moses will hear and relate to that this is what God said. Can you help me speak it to the children of Israel? And that was the work of Aaron. Aaron was not a man who was discipled at all. And Aaron kept continually doing this as a ritual. Oh, this is just my part. This is just what I'm meant to do. And when it comes to giving God sacrifices in the temple, Aaron does it as he was commanded, just a copy and a paste. Not something that was imparting him, not something that was affecting him, not something that was transforming him. It was something that he was still the same person. It was still the same Aaron. It was only when it comes to his office to be able to act as one, he acts as it. And once he's done, he leaves the office. He becomes the normal person that he always has been. But when we look at the man Moses, Moses becomes a man that even leading the children of Israel, he still retreats to a place where he wants to have more with God, that he wants to have more time with God, he wants to have more fellowship with God. And there is no how that this is dealing with God was as though it was just always a man that we can say that yes, this man, even God has to understand that if I've spoken to any of you, I've spoken to any of you in visions, but to this man Moses, I've spoken to him face to face, just like a man speaks with a friend. And this was a man that it was obvious that he was not a man that was just called, a man who was just made a leader, who does not understand what it entails, who does not understand what he needed, because knows that it takes beyond the leadership skills. It takes beyond just assuming a position for you to say, "Oh, I can lead the people," without you knowing that there is something even in your life as well. And that was what Moses was doing, even as a person. That as much as God was leading him, as much as God was calling him, Moses never assumed that all that it was to leadership was just for him to be leading, to be taking the rod that God has instructed them to go with, and just continue to say, "Yeah, children of Israel, let's go today. Children of Israel, let's go tomorrow." He constantly was seeking the face of God. He constantly was taking instructions. He constantly was doing things that Am I still in check? Am I still even on the side that where I am still in touch with the person who has called me into this assignment? But from Aaron, that wasn't the same. Aaron was just a man that he was full of activities. Oh, it is time for us to offer a sin offering to God. Oh, is that so? Let me quickly go and put on my uniform. Let me quickly offer the sacrifice. Oh God, this is the sin offering that we are coming to offer before you. Accept it. Forgive us our sins. And that was all that Aaron was doing. Aaron was a man that continually carried out his activities, and that was fine. But activities does not mean that a man is being formed. Activities does not equate that formation. Activities, so a man can get so busy even with God's work. He was not doing any other work. It was God's work that I was doing. But yet, God cannot say that my servant Moses Aaron. He still refers to me as Aaron, your brother. Aaron, your brother. Aaron, your brother. So it's just like this person, if not for you, we wouldn't have him in this equation. But just as the way you were just so adamant about not being able or eloquent to speak, I would go for the option of you using him. But it was not a man that at any point in time God was able to relate with. It was not a man that God is has seen enough to even want to draw closer. That even as much as Moses goes before God almost all the time, but that was not so with Aaron. Aaron would rather remain, and Aaron was satisfied with that. All that he just needed was Moses. What did God say? What should I say to the people? Oh, this is what I should say to the people. It was just a copy and a paste thing that he was doing. A life that was not even effective, a life that was not showing, carrying out what God actually had in plan. Like there could be more for me, but it was just a life that, oh, all I want there to do is to do my job as it has been rolled out, as it has been said to me. Once I do my job, I'll be satisfied with it. That is, it's a life that I was quickly dependent on. I'm just a leader anyway. And for you to have been a leader by thousands of people, it's some people will say, sincerely, it's really a lot. It's a grace. If you have enjoyed, it's only grace that could have brought you to be a leader, to be leading these large numbers of people. Oh wow, how I envy you. But quick dependence does not equate that you are ready, or that it's a killer, because you feel like, oh, for God to have called me, for God to have used me, for God to have been telling me that I should be the one to do this, go to the holiest of holies, I should do this, I should do that. I think I'm okay with that. And that was the life that Aaron lived and played. It was a life that he kept to be enough satisfied with the level that God was just using him. When your attention is needed, we will call for you, Aaron. But outside that, so imagine if there was no reason to offer an offering. Imagine if there was no reason for anybody to say, oh, let us go to the holies of holies. What would have, what would Aaron, what would his office, would his office still be active? Will his office still be needed? So which means that the reason why the office of Moses was needed was all because of the offering, all because of the sacrifices, all because it was just a priest that God needed to just, the Levites that God needed to just do those things. That if you are to pull those things out, let us say we are in the era whereby those things, those sacrifices were no longer needed. Will the office of Moses still be needed? Will Moses still be we Aaron rather we Aaron still be needed for those assignments? So which means that it was only activities that made Aaron to be needed for that assignment. So if not for those activities, Aaron will not have been needed. And that is also the same thing, that even as much as a lot of us get to be involved in one activities or the other, we feel like, oh, it's because if involved in this, if I'm doing this up and down, oh, it means that, oh, God is actually in need of me, God is actually this, I'm a person that God have arrived at the point where God can even say, yeah, I want to use you. That is not enough. Activities does not equate that you are as relevant as that position that you can be. God might still be using you, just spending the time. God might only be using you just because of the necessity of, oh, let's just use this person because of his position, because of what is required, and there's a person that can still be used at the point like this. That no matter what you are doing, no matter the activities, your business for God should not make you, or should not make you think that is as much as God knows you, or how close you are. Your activities do not make one closer to God. You can be busy and yet God does not know you. You can be busy and God have to speak to another person, even to tell you your job, that thing that you are even doing, that God will require reaching out to another man just for you to know the instruction that pertains to what you are doing, and what you are saying, oh, I am doing, I am closer to God, I am God 5 and 6, for him to have used me, for him to have called me to ministry. Activities cannot equate formation. Activities cannot equate the heart of you learning, going through what God will have you go through. Activities does not equate you being a man that God can say, yes, this is a man after my heart. This is a man that is my friend. This is a man that I pray for him. Yes, this is actually so many things that he has been able to learn from me, that you can get involved and you do not change. You are still the same person. And that's why it's different. Drawing a conclusion here. That's why it's actually so easy for us, or so something that is actually very easy, yes, easy for us to find that there are a lot of Christians that we tend to see different behaviors, and sometimes we question ourselves, even as believers, that are you sure this person is a Christian? Are you sure this person? Because it looks as if everybody just has their own behaviors, everybody just has the ways of doing things that is not in alignment with the same thing that God will have us do. This person can do things in a way like this, and that person can do things in a different way like that. And yet we are still under one person, we are still under Christ. That even the disciples of Jesus, the Bible says they were first called a Christian in Antioch because they could see a likeness in their characters with the character of Jesus. That these were the men that they were from different backgrounds, but being with Jesus had actually begun to do something to them. That when you see this person, when they saw this person's behavior, it's also the same with this person's behavior. It's also the same, and you just have to come to a conclusion that, you know what, we know that there's the place where we have seen this likelihood of character, and that was in Christ. So therefore we are going to just call them Christians because they are behaving in the same way. And the same Christian today is not in the same formation of character that we all have. It's just in a name that we now carry aside to. It's not in a name that now speaks to, and it's my religion, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian. That if 50 Christians should be picked in different locations, do we get to see the same uniqueness? Do we get to see the same likelihood? Do we get to see the same thing that binds us and make us to know that, oh, truly these people are believers, they are Christians indeed? Because for each of them to have this particular uniqueness, to have this particular similarities between them, it actually speaks to it that we can know that they are more of people who had been submitted under the mentorship of Christ, who have been led and who have continuously been taught by Christ.